or many international organizations, they are developing several projects, either expressway, ports, SEZs. These are most important for us to go and invest. Either invest, they are building the infrastructure, or in the business. In the port sector, also we are doing several short sea shipping kind of an agreement. I am not going to spend time because of the lack of time. On the airlines, we have given many freedoms to the airlines, but Thai, Malaysians, and Singapore, they have utilized their 100% slots. So, in the airlines, you do the bilateral services agreement. So, whatever, we have offered to them, they have utilized, but we cannot utilize our slots given to by the ASEAN. But good news is that Guwahati is going to be connected by 6 airlines by March under the Uran Plus scheme, and Assam government Chief Minister has been very kind to contribute 100 crore in the Corpus Fund, which will going to give a subsidy to the airlines company like SpiceJet, Indigo, Air Asia, and Air India and Bangkok Airways to start from Guwahati to Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Dhaka, Yangon, and Singapore. So these are coming up by March. So Guwahati will see many flights. So there are also projects on the digital side, some projects that we are doing in the BIMSTEC. We will spend some time later on what we are doing in the BIMSTEC. And I will end, I have taken most of my time. On the November 15th, we had the ASEAN-India Breakfast Summit, and Prime Ministers with why we call a breakfast. Because it's unique, because ASEAN countries cannot have 2 summits with its dialogue partner like India twice in a year. Because already we had a summit in January 25th. So, but it's a rare privilege they have extended to India to have. They have not extended similar privilege to anyone. Only India, they had a second summit. And we had concluded many projects from the breakfast meeting. And there are many more. The good one, which I think that which is the ASEAN-India Renewable Energy Dialogue, somewhere, setting up the university network. 2019 will be the tourism year. So there are several projects that we have concluded. Last but not the least is that I have presented to you the present, the contemporary. What is the future? Because ASEAN, SAARC, BBI, and BIMSTEC, EAS, they will disappear slowly, or maybe faster space. They will all merge into this called Indo-Pacific, where 7 African countries, 7 South African countries, 10 Southeast, Northeast Asia, 7 Pacific, and 5 countries, they are all now in discussions that can we have a bigger market? So electrical equipment manufacturer, we have big opportunity, not just ASEAN. With ASEAN we have FTA and we are entering into RCEP. You are also getting an outreach to Africa, which is particularly east part of Africa, where you have a huge amount of Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora is an advantage because you can speak in the language, in the culture, and you will have a good business, easy. China doesn't have there. So what is next? My last slide, I pose some questions. Maybe there's some of the takeaways. We can have more discussions on it. One is that China is slowing down because as you grow 10 trillion, 15 trillion, you will be slower, right? It's just like, smaller elephant to become a bigger elephant. Smaller elephant can fast speed, can run faster. But as you grow big, you have to be slow down. So that's what's happening in China. But China, what they have did, they are consuming more and more. So they are not manufacturing what they used to do 10 years. So they're moving into more high-end. I have a respected Dada, a friend, Mr. S.B. Das here, who was the former Calcutta Port Secretary. When he said that his daughter is managing a company in the Washington on artificial intelligence. So I was surprised that I'll just talk about on this. China is the country which offers highest job in the world, about a 15 lakh job So artificial intelligence, who is picking up? The next round of, your cryptology, your fintech, your money, all are in China. They're picked up. And so it is not in India, by the way. So all our IT guys from Silicon Valley, they have moved, they settled down. And China has offered nice villas, Our guys who spent 20 years in Silicon Valley, they need similar kind of infrastructure facilities in China. And very faster speed of flight, moving from DC or New York to that place. I'm not going to speak that place here. So that's also China is doing, attracting all the Bangalore to there. So that's what is happening. China is moving more from manufacturing to services and super services. Artificial intelligence is one of it. Now, there is a space, right? Who is going to pick up? Your garments, you're going to buy it. The leather goods, you're going to wear the shoes. And you are going to buy the gadgets, mobile phone and things. So this is an opportunity for India and some other countries like Bangladesh and ASEAN countries. Now, all depends how do we manage it and how do we partner it. So I think that as a government, what we are promoting three sorts of value chain routes by signing FTA, goods, connectivity. One is that India, ASEAN, and China, and everywhere the ASEAN is in the pivot. Because ASEAN is having FTA with China, with Japan, with many countries, not only just India. India, ASEAN, China, India, ASEAN, Japan, India, ASEAN, Korea. You need to, if you were to go global, then China, Japan, and Korea, obviously in ASEAN, obviously should be your destinations. ASEAN, China, goods and services agreement doing pretty well. We are not us. So in India, ASEAN FTA, we are having 81 billion. Services agreement we have signed, but not yet fully implemented. So ASEAN, India, there are some issues in goods as well as services. But trade issues need to, you have to sit down, you can settle it overnight. It's not a big deal. So what we need time is the connectivity, for which we have set projects. Probably from the association, you need to tell to the government, please complete the trilateral highway. Please complete your Kaladan project. Please build the infrastructure like that. And then the China's coming out the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a big opportunity. So for the economic and business opportunity, I think we need to look at Belt and Road Initiative much closely. Indian Business Association yet to offer what they think about BRI. Very, they are, I think, why they have not come out. So you need to look at what is BRI and what is their investment opportunities there. But I think what Mao Zedong, he said that, look, China and India are the poor countries. And because Mao Zedong, I don't need to tell who is in when I'm in Calcutta. And they said the world will grow only when China and India, they will grow together. So this is in time that, China has to be very, very receptive to us. They need to give more market access to us. We have a huge deficit, China. They need to look at what we are doing, and if we are happy with that, then certainly it is, Panchsheel, it is a China-India bye-bye, and all those things come very much there. But even if China-India is not progressing, my honest conclusion would be that it is an ASEAN, the good market of 4 trillion. We have signed FTA in the goods, in services. Services is coming up. And we have a set connectivity projects. And in ASEAN, you have a variations. You have a middle class in the Cambodia, Laos. Some countries like Vietnam, part of global FTA like CPTPP. So you need to look at more closely the ASEAN markets for your business, particularly Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and other ASEAN countries. So with that, I conclude, and thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry I have to kept you more, depriving you for your drinks and in the dinner, but I hope that I have tried my best to share some information, non-academic environment, and tell you what is ASEAN and what is we are doing. Thank you very much.
No problem. One question, Professor. First of all, we are all fascinated by the connect with ASEAN and the potentialities and the connect with Bangladesh, and especially the FTAs having resulted in such huge increase in bilateral trade. My question may have a bit of a political undertone. Again, it is very basic, may not reflect your erudition, but I am speaking in a limited context of RCEP with a particular country in mind without naming it. See, the restrictive trade practices are tariff as well as more pernicious version of it, non-tariff. India has not perfected the art of non-tariff barriers like many other countries have. Thus, probably RCEP is a fait accompli. But are there enough checks? See, we may say that a huge international recession is on the way because of restrictive trade practices, particularly with the advent of, after the advent of Mr. Trump as US President. But at the same time, can we really ignore that? Is it the burden of one particular country to promote international trade when many other big players are not willing to play by the rules of the game, are not willing to respect the intellectual properties of the other countries? In that kind of scenario, only to promote international trade, you continue to become victim of somebody openly flouting the rules. So how far you think that there are going to be checks, that although RCEP is a fait accompli, does not result in goods from a particular country getting dumped into India without any kind of tariff restriction, whereas theoretically your products will not have tariff restriction over there, but they simply will not go over there. As simple as that. So I would like to get some enlightened view of yours on that. And second question, little more general. ASEAN is a very good example where in 50 years they have been able to lift such broad swathe of humanity out of abject poverty into a middle income countries where the standard of living has become very high. What is the takeaway for India in that? And these are the two questions I have in mind, sir.
Thank you. Two very, very important questions, and I think I will go by the last one.
Easier one.
The easier one, yes. The first one. See, in the last 40 years, the ASEAN, remarkably, they narrowed the gaps within themselves, like 5 countries. And how they did it? Because they realized that if they are all, ASEAN was actually created by the United States of America. In the post-World War, the US, they realized that I need to fix a colony for us. Because these present days colonies are different than what we used to be. So this ASEAN was set up, particularly Indonesia. So if you look closely with Indonesia in the post-independence, or Thailand, which used to know as Siam, so their institutions, their laws, rules are heavily influenced by the United States of America. So what we found that actually when the 5 countries, they came very close in terms, they have similarities in terms of trade, investment, laws, governance, that help, to reach to the bottom of the people in terms of, reaching out. Sometimes with a trade agreement, you are stuck at the South Bloc or at North Bloc or any offices, because of several other reasons. But ASEAN, I have seen that implementations much better in terms of, compared to any other blocks. So as a result, people there, from many, many quarters, they got benefit out of the FTA. Because they started with the Thailand in 63. That time I was not born, but I was told the 63 Thailand, what it is present in the Myanmar today. All they got basically the US GSP. GSP, the benefit that United States, they extended to Malaysia, to Thailand, to other countries, which help them to export more to the US markets, in garments, in electrical, electronics, and they learn from exporting from the US, the standards, the trade practices, the rules, regulations, so that actually helped a lot with them. And then they realized that since we are exporting to US and the European Union, why not we do more exports among us? So that's what, they set up this FTA, in 70s and 80s and more into, in the mid of 90s. So that's the way they have moved step by step, and they benefited a lot. But ASEAN is not, they have done everything. In the goods, still there are issues, because if you would like to cross the border, you have to be stopped at the border. You don't need a visa or anything if you are ASEAN, but if you are an exporter or an importer, if you are a Thai exporter, your goods to be stopped at the Malaysia border, then it has to be transported back to the Malaysian vehicle, then again back to the Singapore, then again, like that, it's fragmented. They're yet to come in. So they aim that these will be all disappear by 2025. So bottom line of the ASEAN, their region arrangement is that they have been successful reaching out to the bottom of the people, the trade benefits. And, the language, the culture, all these made a very strong impact in the ASEAN countries. They realize that we need to be, ASEAN, than identify to be a Thai or to be an Indonesian. That's what I the first question is, it's very, very sensitive for me. I have to be a bit cautious in replying it because my salary comes from the government, by the way. So I won't be able to, talk more about the RCEP because we provide confidential reports to the government in terms of trade negotiation. And the trade negotiation is a very, very, tricky jobs, where we have to maintain some confidentiality. Let me be on camera, I cannot tell all this. So basically, China is certainly is a threat. There's no doubt about it. It is an opportunity, it's also a threat. Whatever we have committed to WTO on MFN, you cannot go back, right? You cannot release China. Suddenly you cannot tell, I'm a Pakistan. Pakistan doesn't provide MFN to India, right? But we provide to MFN too, because we are the founder members of the WTO process. So we have offered MFN to all our trade partners, including China. Now you have a boundary rate. You have already committed to the WTO. You have a applied rate. You have a preferential rate. You can change your tariff as long as it doesn't exceed your bound rate. So maybe presently, when you're in a good time, your rate is low on the floor, 5%, 2%, 0%, but you are allowed by WTO to raise it to maybe 40% if you are bound that to the WTO. So there are enough rooms, flexibility at the WTO compliance. Where we are lacking, that's what is the, as you said rightly, sir, that is the NTBs, non-tariff barriers, or which we call presently the non-tariff measures. NTBs are WTO legitimate. You can put it some standards, safety, security, health, etc., etc. But we lack, in terms of traceability, in terms of fumigation on agricultural products, etc., etc. There are many things. So on the standard is a big issues. Anindita ji, she also spoke about it. And NTB globally we have not done much. We have just beginning of non-tariff barriers discussions. We have not done much. Very difficult. All the countries, they have their own standard, until we reach to a global standard. But there are good examples, like if you start with a global standard like the garments by the Bangladeshis, then you are always free. You don't have to settle down to a lower standard. But China and India, when it comes to the standard, we have a lots of problem. First of all, language, understanding, transparency. China is a restrictive market. They don't want, Indian goods to be sold there. Let me be very frank. They want you buy my goods. And here comes the government or associations where they can, help us or guide us. But it is somewhere I think that government has to take some slightly backseat, allow to the industry association, private sector to make a, they can do lots of things better than what trade negotiators they do. So this is, I can tell, nothing is permanent. China, before 78, what was there, and today China is what is there. So there is nothing permanent, and we can move away. I'm optimist. I think we can, if we do better deal, we can present a better.
A small supplementary. I mean, of course you were cautious, and I had to think a lot before throwing some of that caution to winds. It was not easy for me either. But having said that, I understand that India needs to work on non-tariff barrier as well. But India needs to work very quickly on that. Our association will definitely provide whatever assistance required on the purpose, because working on RCEP without working on non-tariff barriers may pretty well be suicidal for India. I mean, there's a small note of caution. It needs
in terms of NTMs or NTBs, particularly TBTs and SPS. If you have anything on agriculture, certain phytosanitary, please look at it, chapter 6. Unlike the CPTPP, where we have a gold standard, platinum standard, and diamond standard, which was actually negotiated during the Obama administration, still it is there, even if US is not there. RCEP is very relaxed kind of thing. We are not talking about aiming a standard. We are talking about recognition standard. So DGFT Kolkata or DGFT Chennai will be an issue, some certificate once in a time, probably in future, in compliance with the standard offered by in RCEP countries. So we are mutually recognizing each other, and then the next step is harmonization. So in what CPTPP is telling, that you harmonize, you just forget Vietnam, whatever the standards, you have the laws, rules, regulation you have done, you just throw it in the bin, and you follow this standard step by step. Yes. But what in RCEP is doing, in chapter 6 talks about that I agree your standard, I recognize your standard. So certification issued by the Chamber of Commerce or Association or TGFT, which will be attached to the shipping bill or bill of lading, this will be stamped. So I am not going to stop it. So you don't have to do another testing, another kind of a negotiation when your goods reach to the partner countries. So that will be do away with. And probably after that, there is no milestone given. After that, maybe member countries, they decide that we will harmonize. Then maybe that time will be an RCEP standard instead of a BIS standard. So that much.
Like Europeans have harmonized the standard.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, let me compliment you on very comprehensive insight into the subject. I'd like to take a couple of questions from you. Anybody want to ask? Anything on this?
South slides we showed printers as part of share in this taxes. But in these slides, it's being a lot of but this is just a knowledge of
It must be an error.
Yeah, it might be a
Typo.
Okay.
Or alternative reasons.
So Chaudhary is a very diligent person. So
Since we are already running a little late, maybe we can pick your brains during drinks and dinner. Before we close this session,
Sunilji, yes, sir. Well, this has got to do with the non-tariff barriers. What we have seen is the big problem is that for the non-tariff barrier to be imposed on imports, the same quality standards have to be subjected, in local industry has to be subjected to the same quality standard which you subject imports to. Now, which means it means mandatory. Suppose I want to make a BIS standard mandatory, that BIS standard becomes mandatory for the country also. And where I see the big problem in India is that because of still widely fragmented industry and lots of MSME unit, following those standards which you which you impose on imports become almost an impossibility for the small MSME units because of the infrastructure required to impose those standards. And once you do that, you are open to scrutiny and a lot of harassment by the quality enforcing agencies in the country itself, which becomes counterproductive. Now this is a big problem which needs to be solved. See, because what happens as soon as you make a standard mandatory, this becomes a huge problem.
Yeah, it is a very important point and we have seen it. But I am not right person to answer for it. But this is very also very common across ASEAN. So perhaps